Gato Squad, welcome back to the channel. My name is Elias, and if you are new here and like daily car content, hit that subscribe button below. Consider subscribing. So today I want to talk to you guys about the Acura NSX. I recently saw Matt Farah's video on the Smoking Tire YouTube channel, him driving around the NSX, and he was so excited about driving it, and it looked so good driving out there. And it kind of, you know, I like to have aspirational cars that I could maybe one day own, and I never really took a look at the NSX, you know, for many reasons. So that goes to my second thought. I was like, you know, why is the NSX not selling as much as it should? You know, there's a lot of them are sitting on dealer lots, not being sold. A lot of them are just, you know, being sold at a discount actually now, unfortunately. So why is it that such a cool and awesome car that should be selling like hotcakes is not selling at all? Well, I got to thinking, and let's go for a ride and talk about it. All right, so let's talk about this NSX. Now, to really understand what's going on with the NSX, we have to go back all the way to the early 90s, late 80s. Back then, Honda was dominating F1. They had the contract with McLaren. They were providing engines for the McLaren team, and they had Arch and Senna behind the wheel. They were dominating F1 back then, and it showed. Everyone knew that Honda and McLaren and Arch and Senna were just the best thing to watch in F1. If you never watched Arch and Senna in the F1 car, let me put a little clip here just so you can enjoy. Wasn't that awesome? I mean, just to be able to experience that back then and even now, just to hear that, it's awesome. And you know, to know that Honda was developing those engines was very good on Honda, and they used that for marketing purposes. So they took that expertise and marketing help, and they went ahead and created the NSX. So in no way is the NSX related to the F1 cars, of course not. But they did have Arch and Senna drive the NSX to develop the NSX, and it was, you know, it was a really good partnership. So not only was Honda as a brand doing really well, Honda knew what they were doing with the NSX, and they made it. Not only was it a good, durable car as you'd expect from Honda back then, but it outperformed Ferrari back then for less money than a Ferrari. That's incredible. Back then, I mean, everyone was so surprised when the NSX came on the scene. What happened afterwards is that Honda dropped the ball. So the NSX was in production from late 1989 all the way into the early 2000s. That's insane to think about a car basically unchanged for that long. Yeah, they changed the headlights and a couple of things. They added a 6-speed manual instead of a 5-speed manual. It really wasn't much of a change. They needed to do a redesign, and they never did it. Basically, the same thing happened to the S2000, but that's for a different video. So they stopped production around 2005, 2006, and you know, they really didn't have a halo sport car anymore. At the same time, Acura was also, and is still also, flagellating. They're just doing terribly right now, in my opinion. They don't have anything going for them. So let's look at Acura. So back in the early 90s, Acura was killing it. They had the Acura Legend. They came out with the Acura Vigor. They had the Acura Integra as well. All three cars were insanely good, and those nameplates became legendary. One thing that Acura was actually afraid of is that people would no longer remember the name Acura, but instead remember the name Legend, because the Acura Legend was that good of a car. Now, if you were around back in the 90s like I was growing up, I saw Honda as kind of like a hero brand. You know, I saw all these boring like Ford Tauruses and Toyota Camrys. I'm like, boring. But then you saw Honda, you saw Arch and Senna, you saw the NSX, you saw the Integra, you saw the Acura Legend, you knew it was a Honda. And, you know, it was pretty exciting back then. You know, you had the EG hatches, you had the EK hatches. Those were pretty exciting cars too. So, you know, everything was pretty cool back then with Honda. After that, I think Acura made a huge mistake and stopped naming their cars. You know, we had, like I said, the Legend, the Vigor, the Integra, and now they were called the Acura TL, the Acura RL, and the Acura RSX. Alphanumeric names that I don't know why they did it. You know, it was pretty dumb on their part, I think, because all of that marketing clouts and all of the reputation that they had built off of the Legend, Integra, and you know, even the Vigor brand has died off. You know, it no longer applies. They did keep the NSX, like I said, for a very long time. They kept producing it, but unfortunately, they never really redesigned it. All right, so now we have a combination of the NSX being an excellent car. People loved the NSX back in the 90s, but they never redesigned it. And Acura as a brand basically committing suicide by not keeping the names that had brought them so much fame and glory. And now you have a recipe for what you have now. So you go to an Acura dealership today, and what do you find? Well, you know, you find the RDX, the MDX, the ILX. Basically, nobody knows what these cars are. Nobody cares about these cars anymore. They really couldn't care less if Acura came out with a new car. You know, people that buy the Acura MDX, the RDX, etc., they're just family cars that, you know, they're pretty good. You know, they're pretty decent. But even the newest MDX, I feel like the older MDX is still a better product than the newer MDX. That's kind of crazy for me to say, but I've reviewed the MDX on this channel, and it was okay. And I've driven in my brother-in-law's older MDX, and honestly, it still is a better car, even with the older technology. That's a lot to say about that. So when you think about that, you know, there's really nothing much exciting coming from Acura anymore. Their last exciting product was really back when the RSX XS was out, and that was a really pretty cool car. 200 horsepower, nice little coupe, high revving engine, and they even let that die on the vine. They should have kept the Integra name. So, you know, after 2005, 2006, the NSX was canceled, and that left Honda without Acura without a halo car for 11 years, which again, for a brand, is also not good at all. They need something on top to kind of show people, hey, this is an awesome brand, come take a look at us. This car is so much fun. All right, so for the last 11 years, Acura was developing a supercar to replace the old NSX. Unfortunately, for the last, I'd say, 15, 16 years, Honda as a company really took a turn for the worst. You know, after they developed the S2000, I think they just kind of gave up on the whole enthusiast thing. So they used to have a Honda Prelude, which I own one. They developed the S2000, which I also own. And they used to have the Integra, which they stopped making, or they renamed it RSXX, and then they stopped making that as well. So they really didn't have much in the pipeline for exciting cars. The only nameplate they kept alive was the Civic Si, and that's been at 200 horsepower since, I'd say, 2005, 2006. That's pretty terrible. So Honda really hasn't been doing much to keep their enthusiast base alive. Now, like I said, they were developing the NSX, and when pictures and the prototype pictures were coming out, and you know, people were talking about it, it sounded amazing. It sounded like it was going to come with either a V10 engine, or a high revving V8 engine, or something amazing that's going to blow everything out of the water. It looked like a formula similar to what the original NSX was like. So if you look at those original pictures and things like that, I mean, everyone was excited for that. And then the whole project looked to be canceled. Back in 2008, Honda said, nope, we're not doing the supercar thing, or we're going to put it on a back shelf. So it was way more delayed than it needed to be. another thing happening in Honda is that they started getting crazy about miles to the gallon. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, I like being able to get good gas mileage in any car I drive, because that means I have to visit the gas station less. But at the cost of performance, I think it's a really terrible idea, especially with your supercar. So they could have, I mean, they still can, but they could have made the NSX with a nice screaming V8 engine. They could have taken a K24 and then, you know, doubled it up and developed a V8 engine out of it. And it would have been an awesome car. I would be salivating all over it right now if they came out with such a car. They could have kept, you know, the rear-wheel drivetrain. It could have been mid-engine. It would have been awesome. And fast forward to today, and today's NSX sounds disappointing, at least on paper. So what people really wanted was a retrospective look at the NSX with some new technology. What they got was a heavy four-wheel drive hybrid supercar, which in itself, like I said, Matt Farah, Chris Harris, all those guys that know what they're talking about when it comes to cars, they love those cars. But if you're a Honda enthusiast like I am, back when in the 90s I was a kid, I used to look up to Honda. I was like, oh, I can't wait to get the best Honda ever when I grow up. You know, I look at the NSX now and I'm like, am I really aspiring to buy that NSX? It's a hybrid, you know, it has basically nothing of the original NSX except that it's mid-engines. That's the only real thing it has in common with it, and the name. They could have called it something else, and I wouldn't have objected to it either, because it's not really like the original NSX, is it? It's not lightweight. It's not, you know, fun and tossable as it was back in the NSX days. You know, I'm sure it's a really awesome sports car. I'm sure it's a really amazing supercar to drive. I'm sure that it gets really good lap times, and that driving it would be probably one of the most fun things I ever did. But it's still not the original NSX, and I think for that third reason is why the NSX is not selling well. So there you have it, guys. To recap it, first reason why the NSX is not selling well, it didn't build off of the original NSX's success. Second reason is they let the original NSX die in the vine, so the NSX name was tarred from that. Third reason is that Acura itself as a brand is, in my opinion, a dying brand. They either need to revamp their whole product line, they need to redo their whole thing, or I don't know what they gotta do, but they gotta fix it, because right now there's no excitement coming from the Acura dealerships. Alright guys, so thanks for watching as always. If you haven't yet, please go ahead and subscribe, and if you have any questions, put them down below in the comments. Have a good one, guys. Peace out.